I gotta let y'all know what's up. I gotta let you know what time of day it is. I gotta let you know where all the history is being made, man. Is man, you gotta tune in. You gotta tune into the Sheriff Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to an exclusive episode of The Sheriff. Guys, tonight I am blessed with an absolute warrior. Not only is this guy a certified yoga teacher and life coach, he's the co-founder of Bodychek Wellness, which we're going to get into a little bit later. Ladies and gentlemen, I try to think of myself as one of the tougher 1982 birth dates. There's only two gentlemen that I've not been able to cross paths with in my career. One of them is Mr. Colton Orr. The other warrior that I've never crossed paths with, 1982 birthday, Mr. Riley Cote, who I have on my show tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the man, Mr. Riley Cote. How are you doing tonight, my man?
All right, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I do want to remind you that we did cross paths. I don't know if you must not remember back in, I think it's like 2005 or 2006. I believe you were with Rochester and I was with the Phantoms.
Well, I know that we played against each other, but I'm talking about getting a 5-minute major, my man.
I'm pretty sure we did. I don't think it was a whole lot going on in the fight because it wasn't like one of those memorable fights, but I'm pretty sure I have to go back and look at the absolute record to make sure that this is legit, but I'm pretty sure we both got 5 minutes for fighting in the Spectrum in like 2006.
You know what, Riley? I know that when we did play against each other, that obviously, my line played against your line probably and so on and so forth, but I think they might have given us a 2 because yeah, I think because one of those ones where you're clamped up with the guy, you want to go, but then the refs get in quick and they just give you a 2.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, no, I've been in a few of those. I didn't know how it all went down because my memory isn't so great with some of the tellies, but I know we at least got into some sort of skirmish. I can't remember how it all played out, but I know it wasn't like a one of those like 2-minute punch for punch type of tilts. But it's nice to reconnect with you in the flesh here. Obviously on the other side of the fence, and 10 years later. So. Yeah, man, appreciate everything you've done. You did a hell of a job, and I followed you. I followed you probably before you even knew who I was. Keeping track of who I had to land up fighting. So
here we are. Buddy. I mean, it's an honor to have you on the show, Riley. And honestly, man, just hearing you talk now, like it's kind of like when you said, it's nice to run into you on this side of the fence. That's an interesting comment. And I just want to add to that a little bit, because what I'm finding, I don't know if you feel the same way. And I know a lot of guys that did the role listen to the show. So it'll be interesting to see what people think after I say this. What I'm finding is that when I run into ex-tough guys like yourself, I almost feel like it's like a sense of like calmness and like I'm happy to see you. I'm happy to talk to you, but it's almost like it's like a calm relief because I know who you are. I know what you bring to the table. I know how passionate you are. I know whatever we're doing, if it's just a conversation, if we're hanging out, whatever it is, that it's going to be productive and awesome. But I know we also don't have to bash each other's faces in to do it.
Beautiful
right?
thing, isn't
so
it?
It's like a weird feeling, man. It's like I'm getting all these positives, and then boom, I don't even have to fight the guy because we did that in our past. I don't know if you kind of get the same way.
100%. Yeah. No, there's I'm not even sure the exact verbiage for it, but like when you're playing in the trenches and you're fighting, on a daily or preparing to fight on a daily, it's like a different animal completely, the mindset, but how there was still that respect after, what I mean? If I saw you at the bar or wherever, it would be that mutual respect, but now we're so far past the playing days that like the respect has grown even more almost, right? It's because like I understand what you did because I did it, and I understand what all these other guys did, and it's just like that mutual respect that it's hard to really explain or quantify, but that's very real. And again, like you said, we don't have to fight. You know, I can smoke the peace pipe with you. We can bro it up, and I don't have to worry about my coach looking down at me like expecting me to go do something. So it's a nice place to be. Let's put it that way.
I couldn't agree with you better, buddy. And I definitely appreciate you sharing that too. And like while we're at it, Riley, like I just kind of had a thought in my mind just because when you were talking there, I was thinking about a couple different things. And like it's just kind of funny how there's a group of us, right? Like the way I look at it is the tough guys that did it that are birth years maybe 2-3 years younger than us. Let's go as young as the 85s.
Sure.
When you're younger than 85, I still give those guys respect, but the era kind of changed. You know, when those 85s were kind of in their late 20s, we were more in our like 30, and I just find that the younger guys are kind of a part of a different era. So let's take the 85s to let's say the 75s. Let's give those 10 years. We're a group of guys where the way that we are isn't used anymore in the NHL. I mean, you're a great skater, my man. So you kind of changed your game to a way where you could be playable and not have to be a liability to your team, right? So you got over that hump. But the guys that were there that were the enforcers, the one guy in the lineup that was going to go, if there was going to be a fight for the team, he was the guy. That era is gone now, right? But what I find is that guy, Riley, he had to be a team motivator. He had to be kind of like one of the assistant coaches. You know what I mean? He had to be the guy that did something that no one else on the team had to do. But what he also had to do was he had to correspond with the coaches, with the GM. The GMs would come to us a lot. Hey, what do you think of this guy? Whatever. Like we were like a different type of player. I think our era could run professional hockey leagues. I think our era could run the NHL, man. I believe it, man. We know everything. Maybe we didn't get the most ice time, but we had to deal with everybody on every type of level. What do you think about that type of idea?
Well, I agree. I agree with you 100%. Yeah, because you're making a lot of sense with it. It's because you have to wear a lot of hats, like you're saying, and you had to have the optimal attitude, right? You weren't able to be the guy that showed like you're frustrated or you're disappointed on the lineup, wherever. You always had to have the right attitude, and be a team guy and understand it, accept it, and be okay with it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. And like you said, you had like this almost extraordinary relationship with everybody on the team, right? I mean, it was like a little bit closer to the coach because there was that mutual respect, and you kind of knew where you stood. Even the general manager, and I can speak for myself, like it was, and the scouts and everything. It was just kind of like there was like the respect. I always go back to respect because it's like an energy you really can't quantify, but it's there and it's real. And when it's there and it's real, it's undeniable. So from that perspective, I feel like when you got that, you have essentially a superpower, right? It's like it's some sort of power. You don't misuse it, but I think where you're going with it is like, we've seen it all. We've kind of lived it all. We've bred the respect. We've got the street credit. We understand the game. It's not the old school Broad Street bullies. We understand that maybe this modern game might be a little too vanilla and soft. But we could kind of find something in the middle and be reasonable about it, and realistic about it. So yeah, I do agree with you because we think we've got a good grasp on the old school, the new school, and then finding that that place in between.
Yeah, man. And like just to add to that, Riley, like I didn't even want to get to this point until a little bit later in the show because I'd like to kind of do a timeline from the beginning. But like a perfect example, and like obviously I want to ask like the insight and details of what you want to share about this transition. But when you decided to retire, right? And then you're named the assistant coach of the AHL team. Right? Like, I believe that it's because of the type of player that you were, that which brought as much character and being a team guy. And man, if the man's not going to play for us, we want him behind the bench then, right? And I just don't feel that other type of players would have got that type of respect. I believe it's our type of player that earned that, of an example of the transition that you did at the end of your career. Like, am I right at all with that, you think, or?
100%. You know, and it goes back to what we were just talking about, the relationship I had with management, specifically Paul Holmgren, who was the general manager at the time. There was this loyalty, you know, there's this loyalty between myself and the organization, and the organization between me. They believed in me at some point, right? I mean, they believed in me enough to bring me on the Phantoms and eventually to allow me to play for the Flyers and the whole bit. So there was like this belief in me, and which I appreciated. You know, I owe everything to the Flyers organization that I have. Obviously, I had to work for it. But then when 2010 came around, and the season itself wasn't great for me personally. It was great for our team. We wound up losing the Chicago Blackhawks in the finals. But for me personally, I wasn't feeling overly great mentally and spiritually. My physical body was breaking down. You know, another year of my contract, one way with the Flyers. So my year in meetings with Homer, I was just honest with him, you know, where I was at mentally and the whole bit. And it's funny how it works out when you put it out there in the ether, into the universe, you know, and you're honest. It wasn't 2 weeks after the end of the season that year that I went back to Winnipeg, where I'm from, and was sitting there. I got a phone call from Homer, and he's like, "Listen," he's like, "I know where you're at mentally and the whole bit, and it wasn't the year you wanted, but you know." Shel Samuelson, who's assistant coach of the Phantoms at the time, his house burnt down, and there's this coaching job that's available. He's in Sweden. He's probably not going to come back. Blah blah blah. And then like almost immediately did I know it was like this was like what I needed to do. Right? It was like I wasn't feeling overly fulfilled mentally and spiritually. You know, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was probably going to get sent back down to the minors the next year after training camp, just the way it was going. And I didn't really want to go back down there and fight, you know. Like I was just kind of like
totally
I was just kind of like exhausted mentally from all that, you know. And so when he said all this, like almost like in a matter of seconds, that I realized like this is what I needed to do to kind of like to find peace in the game and bow out with honor and whatever else, you know. It was get my salary off the cap. So there was like part of it was like, yes, this is what I need to do personally, but this is what I need to do as a loyal human, as someone that like, you know, appreciated what Homer did for me and the Flyers did for me, you know what I mean? And still doing for me, because he's still looking out for my future in a sense. So you're turning a 1-year playing contract into a 4-year coaching deal. So the play was not to, you know, not that I was getting into it for you know, a career for the rest of my life. I didn't know where it was going to go, but all I knew that I was going the other side of the fence, and it kind of got me out of the party, if you will. You know, I needed to kind of find some peace and stillness in my life. You know what I mean? As hard as I was going on the ice, I was going off the ice, and there was, you know, everything wasn't feeling aligned. You know how it is, man. It's just like a grind and the whole bit. So part of my exit strategy was to not to, you know, you say I'm going to be a head coach of a, you know, of an American Hockey League team or whatever. It was more to find myself and really engage into the world that I'm in now, is in healing and, you know, finding myself and personal development, and but still staying attached to the game and helping young guys out. You know what I mean? I obviously was never a first line guy, but I learned a lot. You know, there's a lot the game could teach you. Outside of the playing stuff, there's a lot of life lessons the games teach you. You know what I mean? And I think that was where I found myself being good at. And the coaching is just being a listener. You know, just listening to these guys and being a soundboard and whatever else. So yeah, so I made the decision to retire. It was like right there in that phone call was like, you know, cashed in the last year and said, you know what, this is what I need to do. This is like a thing of loyalty, of honor, you know, and we mutually parted ways, and that's kind of how it went down. But yeah, I don't think I would have ever gotten that phone call had I not had that relationship, had he not known who I was really deep down inside, and me being honest and vulnerable with him, and for him to even take that leap and put him in a situation like that.
That's amazing, buddy. I'm absolutely loving everything that I'm hearing right now. The one thing, there's two things I want to add that I actually wanted to say a little bit earlier. The theme to tonight's show is resiliency, toughness, and healing. And these topics are going to come up multiple times in the next however long we get, buddy, in this show. Another thing I wanted to add, but that I left out of the intro, probably because I was so nervous, got Big Riley Cote as my guest tonight, is this man is also an AHL Man of the Year award winner. Okay, and the importance to that title is incredible. You know what I mean? And I'd really like to get into that as well. But before we do that, buddy, because I just had to get into all the transition of turning into the coach, of what we were talking about, the role that the tough guy had on the team, the multiple hats that he had to wear, right? I had to hear your opinion on that, so thank you. But I want to talk about Winnipeg right now. I want to talk about Baby Cote, Baby Riley, right? So you were born in Winnipeg. Now, because you mentioned it the way you did, I'm assuming that you lived there for your childhood as well.
I did, yeah. Born and raised, then moved away when I was 16 and played in the Western Hockey League. So yeah,
exactly.
Hockey, everything was it was in Winnipeg.
So now I like to ask about the beginnings, Riley, because I find that, especially with hockey players, like we're kind of like carved into what we become as men in our childhood. You know what I mean? And like, it's funny, like a guy I'm sure you ran into Bushy, into Ryan Vandenbush, right? So this guy, I'm trying to figure out, how does a guy that size, like, and bro, now that I'm talking to you while I'm telling this story, you're actually probably the next guy after Bushy that I'd probably think about. And what I'm getting at is the insane offense and the consistency of doing that. How does somebody build up that type of toughness? How is someone able to just take those boom, 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 because they're deciding to do a Morasti type fight? Like, you know what I'm saying? And for Bushy, what it was is this guy has an older brother that's like years older than him that just beat on him, man. Just beat on him. Growing up, this guy would just give it to Bushy, and they would go toe to toe, and Bushy would have to take these punches his whole childhood. His mom would get all upset and yell and tell him to come in the house, and he's like, yeah, man. So like when I started playing hockey, like getting these half punches because I'm able to shake them and we're on ice, man, I just built up that tolerance. Like, you know what I'm saying? So for you, I mean, the resiliency that you've shown, Riley, like in your whole life, like with everything you've had to go through, I'm trying to figure out how was that created at the childhood? Like, would you say your parents, did you have a sibling that kind of like mentored you? Like, how did you build up that type of character, brother?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I got a really two specific answers for it, where it's coming from, because I never really thought about it a whole lot of where it came from, and I explained to people that a lot of it's coming out of a place of fear. It was a fear of failure, and a fear of of not being enough, or a fear of not representing who I was, or my crew of friends well enough. So and then there's like this element of parenting. So my parents just instilled hard work and good attitude. If I remember two things from my parents, it was that have a good attitude and work and be the hardest worker. So I taken those two elements, and it turns out that my cousin, so it was my mom's sister's son, who was like my mentor growing up. He lands up being a gangster, Hell's Angel, the whole bit. So there was this element of the street credit, street toughness that I almost needed to prove. That yet I only had been in two street fights in my life until I played junior. So I wasn't like a fighter. I wasn't like on the street like looking for it, but I was like around some tough dudes and guys that meant business and the whole bit. So going back to where I was saying, so part of where I think this came from was this element of fear of failure, and then like proving that I'm that tough, or whatever it lands up being. I needed to show people that I was an outlaw, or whatever it landed up being, or rugged and all this stuff, because that was just like so I took the elements from my parents, it was like the hard work and attitude, and then this like these elements coming from a place I identified later. It was like the fear thing. I didn't know I was fighting. It's fighting for my life, really. You know what I mean? Like, in a sense, but like really, right? I mean, it was like, this was my livelihood. This is what I needed. My ego was telling me that this is what I needed to do to get respect and street credit and all this stuff. So that's where I think it was coming from. Because I wasn't like Bushy. I never, I wasn't getting punched in the face of my big brother or whatever else. Like I never, never. I had like a really good, like wholesome upbringing. Like my parents were like, like church every Sunday. I think part of it too was like the spiritual confusion I had when I moved away from, 16 too. Like there was like this who am I, and and what am I here to do, and I get these two worlds of church and then street gangs in Winnipeg and all this stuff. So like there was like this, I don't know, I guess you call it spiritual confusion, not knowing who exactly I am, and feeling like that's what I needed to do to become somebody. Whatever it lands up being, it was a kind of a combination of two worlds, but feeling like I needed to prove something. But like that was coming out of a place of fear. I identified that later when I was kind of working through some traumas and stuff. It's like, where is this coming from? And because who really wants to do that? Like if I could, you probably agree, if you could score 50, like why, that was like the dream growing up, right? We all have the dream of like playing in the NHL and scoring goals, but at some point you got the dream there, and you got these components you're going to work with, and you're going to fight your way there. And that's kind of where my passion came from, was just like, I need to do this. I need to prove everyone that I'm good enough, and that that I'm bad enough, and all this other stuff. And I realize it's very egocentric, selfish thinking, after the fact. But in the moment, it was self-preservation, it was survival, and it was the fight I needed to fight.
That's amazing, buddy. I appreciate you giving that insight, Riley, because a lot of what you say is like how I feel and how I've expressed like answers to similar questions and stuff. And it's just a beautiful, man. It's a beautiful thing, the way that you're expressing yourself. It's so healthy. It's so informative. You know what I mean? I can't get over it, buddy. I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm serious though. So I appreciate it.
I love this stuff too. It's amazing when you speak it out loud instead of just like bottling it up and being vulnerable and talking through anything, right? I mean, it's powerful stuff.
It is, dude. It is.
Most people bottle it up and aren't honest with themselves or their situation, right?
Yeah.
I think that's like what I try and bring and lead with, is being honest and being accountable. And you said express, like that was like a word I was looking for when I was speaking. It was like I didn't know how to express myself. I didn't understand like the creative elements that we have and the ways to express, you know what I mean? All these different things. And like, so naturally when you're in a certain part of your life, you have to express some way, and it lands up being, in this case, through violence, but even though I didn't feel like I was really a violent person, that's the way I landed up expressing myself. But I found obviously on the back end of this whole lesson and experience that I learned that we all need to express ourselves, but we need to find positive ways to express ourselves. And that's really kind of like what I've learned the most, is I was just bottling everything up and trying to be something I wasn't, and all this other stuff. And here we are. It was an amazing experience. And don't get me wrong, I loved a lot about it. But I look back on it, and I just like, some of it are just like, geez, I'm like, I wish I'd been a little more mindful of this and that and this and that. But life has a way of moving you around and shaking you up and putting you, in places where you need to learn about yourself a little bit more. So that's, I look back, and that's kind of how I feel. It's just like, that was all just to get me where I am today. I needed that. I needed that experience. So.
Yes, buddy. Yes. 100%. Dude, you mentioned a little while ago about like when you were 16, 17, and it's obviously it's Prince Albert that you had to move to, right? Yep. So now what I'm interested in is, you're a guy that was trying to like discover yourself, you said, right? Like, who am I, that type of thing at that age. Now, you must have really like had a base of success. And what I mean by that is your billets, your land parent situation, the relationship you had with the coaching, the relationship you had with your teammates. Because, dude, I'm a stat guy, Riley. And what I'm seeing with your junior is how much you improved every year. Your numbers alone, that's improvement. But then I'm a guy that I play major junior. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to move away from home and you know, the impact of the veterans and this and that. And a guy that improves every single year, what does it tell me? It tells me that he embraced the system, that everyone must have liked him because he, you know, he was able to thrive and get better. And, you know, that involves confidence. It involves getting stronger. It involves getting faster. And how do you do all those things? Well, you have to, you know, everything has to work out. So this is, you're a kid that needed to discover yourself. Do you feel you did quite a bit in that amount of time? Because you got better every season, buddy.
Yeah, I did, definitely. You know, I clearly improved, and you know, started working myself up within the different lines and playing more and the whole bit. Um, but I still feel like, you know, my first year at 16 years old, I think I had the most fighting majors, and I had a coach named Kevin McClellan. You would know, played, you know, four Stanley Cups with Edmonton Oilers back in the day, and he
Yes.
was nuts. So, and not that he like told me to be a fighter, but he kind of planted a few seeds. I never really accepted it. You know, I fought just because I kind of felt a little bit pressure to do it early. And then the next year I played a little more, fought less, and then I played even more, and then even more, and I fought less and less and less because I was like, okay, well, I don't need to do this because I'm a player, right?
Yeah.
I'm on the power play, and I'm penalty killing all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, like go back to, you know, the two core elements that my parents, you know, ingrained in me was like the work hard and a good attitude. I think I've always kind of had those. I landed up being the captain my last year in Prince Albert and the whole bit, and just really, I got a lot of my points by just working hard. You know what I mean? By just trying to like be the hardest guy out there, and it was nothing fancy or sexy about the way I played, even back then. Um, but certainly, like I knew I was better than what I was at as a 16-year-old. You know, but that was the first time I moved away from home and started embracing this close to pro game.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I was drafted to the Western Hockey League in the second round, and I was, you know, always like the better player, you know, out of Winnipeg and the whole bit. But then you go into a large pool of great players, and you're a small fish in a big pond. All of a sudden, it's like, holy shit, you know. But you know, naturally, you get stronger. Like I was like 170 pounds or something. I weighed in at 16 years old, so like I
Yeah.
was like skin and bones, and you know, I didn't understand like, you know, strength in the sense of like what true strength was. I always equated it to muscle mass. So then I got into the psychology of like having to lift a lot of weights and look this big and be a certain weight, and all this delusional thinking I got swallowed up in. And I think part of that delusional thinking was kind of like what made me confident enough to like say, well, I'm going to fight the biggest dude and the guy with the most penalty minutes, because I was like, I was muscle strong, right? I wasn't like functional fighter or functional hockey player strong. I was like, you know, but that was like, there wasn't a whole lot of information back then, resources like teaching guys how to actually train like legitimate hockey players or fighters for that matter. You know, you look at like UFC fighters and boxers, like how efficient they are and how they move, and they cut weight to, you know, they cut weight to move down weight classes and the whole stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like doing the opposite. I'm gaining weight to move up weight classes. I'm lifting heavy. I'm becoming less functional. But we go back to your question and in my improvement, I think it was just like mindless warrior stuff of just like working hard, but I wasn't necessarily working smart. And eventually it came to a point where I realized like that hard work started working against me, where I wasn't as fast as I probably should have been because I'm lifting so much, and I wasn't as functional of a mover as I should have been because, again, stiffening up the body. And then I felt like I had to go almost backwards and start like reversing some of the damage that I caused. So it's extra work now, but it's smarter work. So it took me a while to figure this all out. It wasn't overnight for sure, but all I know is I was just wired to do whatever I needed to and adapt with the information I had. You know what I mean? I wasn't the smartest guy as far as understanding this all. I was just trying to like make sense of it, of the information I got from like the trainers we had and the strength guys we had at the time, and just my own attitude and drive was trying to like glue it all together and see what I can come up with.
I
That's
hear
kind of
you,
how
brother.
I got there.
I hear you, but like, I mean, it just it came out right away. Like as soon as I looked at it, and I also wanted to mention this is a guy back to back 50+ point seasons. His last year in junior, 28 goals and 51 points, and that's impressive, Riley. You know what I mean? You got to be proud of stuff like that, right? Now, the fact that you were undrafted. This is another thing of this resiliency because, dude, like, I know how hard it is being a late pick with all the politics. Being undrafted, that you gotta do so much more than those drafted guys that are you just want to kill them, right? Because the opportunities they're getting. And so I want to point that out at first. Now, when did you find out that you were going to the Leafs camp, like out of junior? How did that all come about?
Yeah, it was in the middle of the summer. So 18 years old, I went to Minnesota Wilds camp. 19 years old, I went to Columbus Blue Jackets camp. And you know how that goes when you're not on the radar at all. You go there for 5 days, you go maybe do the rookie camp, and then you're on your way back. So my 20-year-old year, I had a few different offers as far as invites go, and Toronto. Just being a Canadian, for whatever reason, I decided to go with Toronto. I knew Kevin McClellan was assistant coach of St. John's Maple Leafs, so I think that was like the one reason.
Oh, okay.
There's a connection there of like, oh, maybe I'll play in the American League, and I know Mac, he knows me, and he knows what I can do, and blah blah blah. So. That summer was when I really decided to take on the role of the enforcer, right? It was like, I'm going to Toronto. So when I accepted the invitation, I was like, I'm going in Toronto Maple Leafs training camp, and I'm fighting whoever. I don't know, it doesn't matter, So that was the start of me in that era. So it was nothing more than just weaning through a couple of the invites, making sense of, the connections where I might land up, and if I have anybody in that organization that might be a supporter of mine, that was a little bit of thinking behind that. So naturally, Toronto was that, and went in there and my first shift actually of the white and blue game, I ran Travis Green. Darcy Tucker comes over and popped him, two punched him, whatever else. Obviously Darcy Tucker's a middleweight at best, but nonetheless, like that was kind of like
veteran though.
The fire that I went with and the whole bit, and landed up getting sent down to St. John's and eventually in the Central Hockey League in Memphis, which there was their affiliate there at the time. And landed up winning a what the hell was it called? The President's Cup in the Central Hockey League, but at the same time, I was like, God, I got to get the hell out of this league. You know what I mean? I was like fought 35 times and fighting all these juice monkeys and you name it, the biggest dudes you ever see. But I wanted the hell out of there. So yeah, man, I just the next year I signed with Columbus and landed up in the East Coast Hockey League, up and down with Syracuse at the time, and the whole thing there again. But it was going back to your question about how I landed up in Toronto, was just it was the time of my career where I could have gone back to juniors, but I was like, man, I'm not going back to junior another year, and being an overage 20-year-old, I'm like, I got to at least give myself a challenge here, and that's when the challenge was turning pro, but the bigger challenge was like, okay. Like, here you are, you want to be a big boy? You're going to be a big boy here now. So this is it. And that was kind of the mentality. I was looking at guys getting called up, and it was guys with a lot of goals, a lot of penalty minutes. I was looking at some of the tough guys in my era in the Western League. My roommate at the time in the Prince Albert, his name is Grant McNeil. You might remember him. He was a tough guy.
Florida.
He was drafted the 3rd round of Florida, exactly. And I'd fought him in practice, and I'd fought a few heavyweights, in the couple of years as I got older in the Western League. And I was like, geez, I know I can do this. So that was like, just a little experience with the fight and just like the drive and the hunger. So that was kind of really the variables that propelled me to take that leap and whatever you want to call it, the plunge into the Central Hockey League instead of going back to the Western League and probably dominating in some way, shape, or form. But that wasn't overly attractive to me. Like dominating as a 20-year-old or like, going to fight my way out of the Central Hockey League. It seemed like a more of appropriate thing for me and the way I'm wired, So that was not that I expected to be in the Central Hockey League out of the gate, but that's where I landed up because I didn't really realize how good the American Hockey League was at the time.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, that makes it 3. There was 2 things I wanted to touch up on, and that will be the third one. What you just said. First off, everybody knows how tough the depth chart has been for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't know about the last like 5-8 years, Riley, but prior to that, from that year all the way up to maybe 2015 or whatever, you know what I mean? Well, when fighting was still going on, right? The Toronto has always had a deep depth chart. Like I'll talk to guys and they'll be like, yeah, man, I would have got here, but the depth chart was so deep. Like, I'm telling you, man, they were so tough. So was St. John's. That organization, Toronto or St. John's, they were like the scariest teams to play against for me, man. Like, you know what I mean? So many guys, there's just, you know the anxiety that it is when there's multiple guys, right? And then you got guys like because I played with them in Sarnia and junior, like guys like Rob Polinack that was that was there. That really the guy, like, you know what I mean? Like he should have been somewhere, but now he's taking up another spot because he can kind of do that role, but really he should be a top 2-3 line guy, right? So trust me, man, I know all about that situation. What I found impressive is you going down to Memphis, you doing that work, Riley, that work you put in there. Would you say 35? I thought it was 30. Man, you did 35. There was no stat where I could see that, right? I was just trying to guess, right? With the minutes. Yeah, bro, that's even more impressive. And then the fact that you guys won the championship, like dude, that's like a really good experience to have young in your career, knowing what it takes to go through all those rounds. And like it was crazy. Like my first playoff run with Rochester, bro, I couldn't believe how late you could play into the year, because I never went anywhere in junior. You know what I mean? Like first round exit. Longest I played, bro, was the middle of April for junior. I go to pro, bro, we're playing until like the end of May, beginning of June. Like, holy man, right? But you got to experience that as a 20-year-old, and that's awesome. So, you mentioned about the next year with Syracuse and all that. Now, what I'm really curious is the connection with Philly. Because Philly, to me, when I think Riley Cote, there's a Philadelphia Flyers sign, boom, pops up in my mind, right?
Yeah.
Like that's who you are to me, man. You're the Flyers tough guy, brother, right?
Yeah.
You're my age, you're the guy. Like, that's who I think of, man. Someone that's older than me, could be like Brashear and whatever. Riley Cote, that's who it is for me, right?
Yeah.
So what was the first connection with the Philly organization for you?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, after that year with Dayton and Syracuse up and down there, it was the lockout year, right? So it was 04, 05.
That's right.
And I was like spinning my wheels, like, what the hell am I gonna do? Where am I gonna sign? Blah blah blah. So it turns out that Memphis River Kings landed up calling me back. I'm like, God damn! Like, do I really want to sign back in the Central Hockey League? Is it come to this? And sure enough, it did. So I landed up going back to Memphis. This is my third year pro. And I was there for 4 days, and get a phone call, Ron Hextall. He says, listen, he's like, we got a couple injuries and a suspension. Why don't you come meet? We'll sign you to a 25-game PTO and meet the team in Hartford, and we'll just see how it goes. And you're probably just coming up for the weekend, but we'll reevaluate. So long story short is I go to Hartford. I don't play the first game. The one of the other tough guys, his name was Jeff Smith, who was a tall, lanky guy, was out. They had Josh Gratton, Ben Eager at the time. I think that was it at that time. Anyways, I go meet them. Don't play the first game. Play the second game. Someone gets hurt, so I stick around an extra week or whatever. And then, however it lands up being, I guess I outworked this Jeff Smith guy who landed up being, on the shelf when I first got there, and kind of slid into like whatever, this 13th spot. And then another guy goes down, and next thing you know, I'm playing and I'm improving and whatever, fighting and the whole bit. So 25 games is up, another 25 gamer. 25 games is up, another 25 gamer. We land up signing 4 25-game PTOs throughout the whole year. We land up winning the Calder Cup. I mean, we went on a 17-game winning streak. We had a really tough team. Myself, Josh Gratton, Ben Eager, and then we landed up signing Todd Fedoruk, who had already played in the NHL and came back down for the minor leagues. Eventually broke his face. Friggy, broke his face with a puck. So then it opened up, I guess, more space for me. Unfortunate for him. But, you know how it works. I'm not just the way it was, and so landed up having like an unbelievable first full year in the American League where I improved personally. We won. When you're winning, everything is better. I mean, obviously, right? It's like going to the rink is just like glorious, and playoffs with the good energy. It's just like if I look back at my career, if I was one season that's like most memorable, that would have been it. You know what I mean? I kind of stuck my flag in the ground, made a name for myself in the American League. I think I fought 30 or 31 times that year, whatever it lands up being. Everyone and their brother, and winning a Calder Cup was obviously the biggest memory there. And then I landed up signing, I think, a 2-year deal after that, and then I think I stuck around in the minors for another year and a half or so, and then eventually found my way with the Flyers. But yeah, nothing more than just like the confidence, right? Like you're playing, you got to. Clearly, I had a coach that believed in me because I had a great relationship with John Stevens, and he would talk to me just like a human being. Like I didn't feel like there was like that coach-player relationship, but I could think of all the coaches I had. He instilled the most confidence in me, just the way he spoke to me, and the way he played me. He believed in me. Obviously, I wasn't going up there on the power play or last 2 minutes, but I felt like throughout the game that he put me out there and he trusted me. I just felt that. You know what I mean? And when you feel that, I just you can just perform on a higher level. You just feel like you can take that game to the next level, and that's where I felt like I did my most development. There was that year. So pretty interesting how it worked out.
I'm glad you brought up that year. Like, I mean, we brought it up, but I'm glad that you're talking about it because, man, there's a couple points that we have to say to the listeners here, Riley, about the 2004-2005 NHL lockout season, but playing in the American Hockey League. Now, I've had guys on this show the one that sticks out right away is Mike Scroy because he just loves to talk about this season, okay?
Yeah.
But multiple guys that played in the league that year. Everybody can agree, Riley, and I want your opinion as well. Was that not the toughest league that you've ever played in that year in the American Hockey League? The amount of tough guys in each lineup on each roster. You would have the AHL tough guys. About a third to half of the league had their NHL tough guy play on the AHL team. So you got multiple guys, NHL and AHL. A lot of the AHL guys could play in the NHL. They just weren't good enough players. But you know what I mean? So that makes it even a bigger battle, right? And then, okay, so now you got a third of the guys on one ways playing in the roster. I don't know if you would agree with that statement. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you're doing all this playing 3-3s and mostly taking buses, right?
Yeah.
That's a unique season, my man.
Yeah, it is. I didn't really, think of it from that perspective, but the way you laid it out is 100% true. There's no question. I guess, in my mind, in my situation at that time was like, there was no analyzing. It was just doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is. I look at the next team we're playing in the roster, and like you said, like there was 2, 3, 4 tough guys in every team. Like there wasn't a shortage of fights. And I know, like I was a young guy. Josh Gratton's an '82 birthday, and he was still hungry and fighting a lot. So like, between the two of us, like we knew there was gonna be fights like almost every night, right? So there was no escaping it. It was like you had to embrace it and just be almost like licking your chops. Like that was early enough still in my career where I was still hungry, where I still almost enjoyed, the build up of like who I'm gonna fight next and building a team for myself. So there's still like that whole element behind it. But yeah, man, I was just like looking at the rosters and you play Norfolk and there was Mike Brown and Sean Thornton and whoever the hell they had, maybe it was David Cote at the time, and there was like 3, 4 like not small tough guys, like big dudes. And you go through with the league, the Albanese and I mean all up and down the East Coast, it was all legitly tough guys. So but yeah, no, where I was at that time, there was no, like, I couldn't overthink it. It wasn't like, oh shit, man, I got an NHL guy down here and I'm gonna fight him. It was just like, okay, let's just go and see how this thing plays out. And that's kind of how it was. But yeah, it was outside of toughness. It was like, arguably like it was the best league. It was the best league in the world at the time, right? I mean, you had think about all the first rounders and stuff like that maybe had a sniff with the NHL clubs and were down in the minor leagues for that season. Like it was legit. It was a legit league and some legitimate tough guys, and it was still kind of the tail end of the true era of tough guys, right?
That's right.
You still had maybe 4 or 5 more years left of that, but there was definitely a bunch of them still floating around.
Definitely, bro. And like I just want to I want the listeners to know the type of work that you put in that year, because dude, you had a really good year that season. Like you put for first of all, you played 61 games. Okay, so that means like if we're just doing the black and white math, you fought literally every other game. Now I know there was probably a game you had two or whatever, but Riley, every other game you fought in the toughest league that I think of all time. Okay, you had 11 points, bro. You also had 280 PIMs, bro. You know what I mean? And then let's go to the playoffs. So you get 13 playoff games in and win a Calder Cup. That's a really, really solid season, brother. You know what I mean? For that type of year, wow.
100%. You're right. It was, and I'm just being honest with like how it all played out and the situation itself too. Like like we go into playoffs. And I talked about like the trust of the coach and how they respected me and stuff like that. Like he didn't have to play me in the playoffs, but his comments to me were like, "I know I'm going to get out of you every night, and we're going to play you over, a veteran guy, two veteran guys." And we landed up getting Jeff Carter and Mike Richards out of juniors in the playoffs. So there were two more guys that had to come out of the lineup, and somehow I still was in the lineup. It's just a testament to just like the relationship I had with the coach, but not because I'm kissing his ass, but he said it to me several times. I just know I'm going to get out of you, and I feel confident playing. So like for me, I'm just like, well, thank you. Like there's nothing else for you to say, and I appreciate that, obviously. Yeah, there was some unhappy individuals in the locker room. When you have a guy like myself that's playing ahead of guys that have been in the league for 3-4 years and stuff like that. But the whole year was like I say a Cinderella story because. Like 4 PTOs,
man.
Like sign me to a goddamn contract. You know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? You love me so much, and I'm grinding it out like this. Like throw a kid a bone, but nothing in life's ever easy. And it was just like I guess it was just more more incentive for me to do better and improve and grind and that's what I ended up doing. But it was just. It's just a magical year all around. Like there was no season like that I can remember in my whole hockey career than just having success. When you have team success, the personal success kind of comes with it, or however that dynamic worked out. But it was just like the right time. It was the right moment for me to find my way. The right organization. You said like the Flyer, the Phantom. Like I just embodied Philly. Like I knew about the Flyers and the Broad Street Bullies and the whole bit, but like. I'm like, when I got called up, I had two guys said to me, "You're gonna fit perfectly in Philly." I'm like, "Really? Is it you think so?" And like, so I kind of did my research in like 2 days till I had to get to Hartford and Philly, and it was just like, I'm just gonna take this opportunity and run with it. Like this is an opportunity to embody everything you've been thinking about doing and being the tough guy and this this superhero type of figure. Well, here's the city for you. You know what I mean? Because these guys are absolute animals, and they had an organization built around that. Yeah. So you better take advantage of this opportunity, and I thought I did. Almost to a fault, where I almost stopped thinking about playing hockey, and it was just always all about the fight. It was all about the crowd and the fans, and you know what I mean, and the entertainment component of it. But it was magical. The whole thing, yeah, it was surreal.
Now I'm very curious. Like I know the listeners will be too, and I'm so curious, man, because my like the experiences that I remember in the AHL, like there's like a handful of ones that I remember like so clearly, but one of them is playing in the Spectrum. Mm-hmm. That arena, man, to me, it was so unique. I don't know if it was just the fact that it was like Philadelphia we were playing, or if it's the way the Spectrum is. I don't know what's more than the other, man, but I wanted to get your opinion on that arena. Was it different from any other arena you've ever played in? And how did you what kind of power did you get from that history?
Yeah, I love playing there. I actually struggled when eventually I got called up and played in the Wells Fargo Center. I think it was Wachovia Center at the time, but yeah, it was, I don't know what it was about it. Like there was something like sacred about the Spectrum. Yeah, and I'm not sure if it was the history of it or if it was just the way it was set up and it was like it was like a little bit old school where the lights weren't as corporate as most of these buildings are. There was just like something like minor leaguish about it, but like also major leaguish about it. And I can't really put it into words exactly what it was, but yeah, I felt the same thing. I loved playing the Spectrum. It wasn't just the home games. It was just like I just like loved the energy in it. We had good attendance, and the lower bowl was pretty full most of the time.
How
Yeah,
funny
again,
were those fans, man, near the
oh,
benches?
oh man,
I mean, could you guys hear, like, you know, the guys I'm talking about behind the
Oh
benches?
yeah.
Could you guys hear that shit, what they were saying to the away bench, or not really? Like,
Well, some stuff, but not everything. I know it was aggressive. You know, I just know from being in Philly and knowing how
yeah,
these fans operate that it was not probably not PG, but yeah, no, everything about that building, man. I was like distraught when they had plans to take it down and turn it into a whole event center type of thing. I understood the business component of it, but yeah, there's something different. There's just something different about it, and you compare it to other, I guess minor league buildings. It was truly an NHL building at one time, so that's probably what the feel it was. But
yeah,
nonetheless, the Phantoms and the Phantoms organization really like did a good job of building up a solid fan base there and putting a nice product together, not just like on the ice, but in the community in the whole bit. But yeah, there was something sacred about that building. Like I just loved going to the rink, and it maybe had something to do with winning that year or whatever else. But even the next year, like getting up and playing games in the Spectrum wasn't a hard thing to do.
yeah, dude. And like you just mentioned the word community. There's another thing that me and you have in common, my man, which I'm very proud to talk to you about, is that now this next season, 2006, 2007, you were the man of the year award you got. And that award goes to the player that has the biggest impact in his community. And how does he do that? If it's through charity work, appearances, doing talks with kids, there's so many ways that you get to that point, Riley. You know what I mean? I embrace that part too. I would love to hear about your experience in Philly that year. I know you must have been busy, man, off the ice, winning the Man of the Year award.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't think I had changed anything in my behavior or, the things I was engaged away from the rink. It was something that I always took pride in, even going back to juniors. I was at the Indian reservations, speaking to the kids at the hospitals. Like, it's like most guys do it, and I did it for 4 years in juniors. I did it in the Central League and the East Coast League. I love to do it. And anytime anybody asked me to do it, I'd be like, yes. There was never like a hesitation. Like what else do I got to do, really? So that year I didn't really go above and beyond. I didn't think, I was always, yes, I'm in, I'll do whatever. It probably had landed up being me being in the organization an extra year, or be more of a core piece of the team, maybe. But yeah, no, it was always something that I love doing. I still do it. I still love doing it. It's just, and it wasn't like I went and did it for any sort of pat on the back. I didn't do it because I was like looking around and seeing who was seeing me do this. So I just thought, first of all, this is part of the job. You need to do this. You don't have the right to say no. But above and beyond that, I actually felt good doing it. You know what I mean? There's something, when you go to a hospital and you see, other people's misfortunes and you're able to put a smile on someone's face, like, whether you're in the minor leagues or in the NHL, they don't matter. You know what I mean? A smile is a smile, and the energy is that energy. So I just love that piece of it. It was just like, geez, I'm like, some meathead like me can make someone feel like happy for a few minutes. Like, that to me was like, where it all really was really fulfilling. So that year, I didn't go into the year and be like, oh, I'm going to win the Man of the Year award. It was just like, I was going about my business like I always do, and just do what I think is right, and try and be a positive member in the community, whatever that looks like, being somewhat of a role model. But yeah, no, obviously it was nice to get that for sure, but I never went into it ever expecting it. There's no expectations with that stuff. It was just doing what I thought I needed to do and put a smile on my face like I usually always had, and had a good attitude, I just trying to be a beacon, I guess.
Yeah, man. And like the way I look at it, Riley, and I'm sure you look at it the same way. It's not about the award, but the award represents the passion that the person has for it. You know what I mean? Like if you get the award, there's a level of passion that you have for that, and it was recognized, right? So I gotta say thank you for being you, buddy, because I know you said you didn't change a thing, but man, they recognized it that year, right? So that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
absolutely awesome. The next thing I kind of wanted to jump into, buddy, was okay, so like the next season, 07-08. Okay. So this is what I noticed. I noticed again the amount of work that you put in. 70 games played. Now that's 70 games played. To me, for the physical guy that you are, for the job that you had to do, buddy, that's consistency on a high level. Okay. We're talking being the team enforcer, all those hats we were talking about earlier in the show. You're doing it all, almost the whole season, every single game almost. Okay. Now, it's a 200 plus PIM season. Okay. But what I really want to talk about, Riley, I know you know what I'm getting at, man, is February 17th, 2008. What did you do against Mr. Carey Price?
Oh man, I wish I could celebrate it a little more than I did, which was no celebration. But yeah, I somehow snuck one over Carey Price's shoulder.
First NHL goal versus the Montreal Canadiens, Mr. Carey Price, probably the best goalie of our generation, right? Can you talk a little bit about the goal, bro? That's a big thing, man.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because we were down, I think 5-1 or something. There was maybe 10 minutes left in the third period, and I was hungry that game. I was looking for a fight. I was trying to fight Steve Beijing, and I understood he wasn't a heavyweight. The Mike Komisarek was floating around, so I was like wrapped up with that. The game was out of hand, 5-1, and then John Stevens was the coach at the time, and we're down, and he's playing me more than I normally would probably play in the third period. Yeah, it was actually kind of a nice breakout. I went back, got the puck, broke it out, moved it to RJ Umberger, moved up to the middle of the ice. It was like an attack. He moved it back to the middle of the ice at the blue line, and then just shot in stride and put it over his shoulder. But it was the game was out of reach, so I wasn't
no selling.
It was just kind of like went in the corner. Guys came around, gave me a pat. Nick showed no emotion. Went and lined back up. The funny thing is, I went and lined back up, and I lined up with Steve Beijing. I was like, "Want one?" And he's like, "Hell no." He's like, "You just scored, dude." I was like, "Yeah, but that's not my job." And he never thought, but yeah, it was memorable because it's like I guess you always dream about scoring an NHL goal. But it would have been nicer if it had been like a game-winning goal or some sort of more of a meaningful goal. But that's besides the point. I'm happy it happened. But
of course, was it in Montreal or was it in Philly?
No, it was in Philly.
It was in Philly.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, right on.
Yeah,
man. Did the water bottle pop off or anything?
No
man?
water bottle pop off. No, it wasn't that. Wasn't that much of a laser, but he was probably snoozing anyways. He's probably like, this guy's not going to hit the net. Fell asleep at the wheel there, but it's funny. I like talking about it because it's like, I look back at my whole pro career, especially my NHL career, and people would think like the NHL goal would be like the biggest thing that I feel like I accomplished, and it's really not. Like I just almost laugh about it now because it's like it's so meaningless. I think my journey and where the game put me is far more meaningful when you talk about telling a story than one NHL goal on arguably one of the better goaltenders in the world. But we can laugh. We can laugh about it.
No, that's pretty cool stuff, man. You know what I mean? Like just like the fact of it being against the Montreal Canadiens is cool, right? And then, of course, I mean, all their goalies have been pretty sick. They're starting ones anyway. But Carey Price, I mean, he's a generational goalie. So, yeah, buddy, for sure. So, dude, so like, okay, so and like, I was talking to my producer Danny before the show, and I was just like, dude, you know what, like this guy, like I'm a big fan of this guy as a player. You know what I mean? Like he's my age. He's the Philadelphia Flyers tough guy. Like it's so awesome, right? But I'm like, bro, it just equally as awesome is everything he's got going on right now post playing. I mean, first off, we got to touch up on the coaching. I mean, it was August 9th, 2010. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. That was the day that you officially retired, like like to the media on paper. You know what I mean? That was the date that it says, right? And then obviously you have the opportunity, like you explained in the beginning, got that call for Adirondack. Now, first question, when was that switch from Philly to Adirondack for the AHL team? Like was it that next year or
It was the year, but it was the year before. So they had played 1 year already in Adirondack.
in Adirondack?
Yeah, so they
Okay,
moved
cool.
from Philadelphia Phantoms to Adirondack Phantoms that year before. So the team moved from the Spectrum up there. They knocked down the building, and they're building a new rink in Allentown, Lehigh Valley there. So that move up in Adirondack was a temporary move. It was supposed to be 4 years, landed up being 5. I landed up being there 4 years. Yeah. So
yeah, dude, and then Riley. The other thing is, I'm like, okay, so this guy, he got a shot to coach or whatever, and then I'm kind of like, I'm looking, doing my research. I'm like, okay, so what did he coach for? Like 1 or 2 years, and then I'm like, oh, there's another page. Whoa, this guy coached a few, like more than I thought. Dude, that's pretty cool, man. Like you must be a good coach. They're not going to keep re-signing you.
Yeah, I think it goes back to all the things we talked about earlier. It was just I just think that I landed up being a good communicator to the young guys in a good buffer zone between the head coach, right? It was just more about really just landed up being a listener, right? I mean, you have to realize that like you're almost like a psychotherapist in some way, shape, or form as an assistant coach, right? So
an assistant coach, yes.
Right, you're listening to the guys, and you're listening to guys complain about ice time. You're showing, you're actually showing them some video clips and stuff like that. But a lot of times, you're just like talking to disappointed guys, or guys that are struggling, and you're just trying to get into their heads. So I think, like, I connected with the players, right? I mean, I'm not a douche, and I treated guys the way I wanted to be treated. I just speak to them like I was never like mad. It's like, what am I gonna get mad about? You know what I mean? But I'm just trying to put a realistic spin on the environment that they're in and what world they're living in, and try and just bring some realism to the game itself. But yeah, no, I ended up coaching as an assistant coach for the Phantoms for 7 years, and yeah, I wouldn't even say great coach. I mean, there's like coaching, I mean, especially assistant coach, are more than replaceable. But I think, again, it's just like I had a rapport in the organization. They knew, all the management knew who I was and my character, and the players did too. The players that I was working with, like there's a mutual respect there, but I was never out there flexing my muscle or trying to like act like I'm above them. So I think I always just try and be the way I like to be treated. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's just like, let's just be honest with each other. Let's just talk through it and have a couple laughs. You know what I mean? Like, remember, at the end of the day, we're playing a game here. This is it's a pro, but like this is a game. You got to figure out that part of it and have some fun with it, and be real too, right? I mean, you have to be honest with your own performance. You have to be honest with your own, and your own life and your accountability in your own life. And I used to like the party, and it's like I'm not going to say not the party, but if it's affecting your performance, you might want to dial her back. It's like this is stuff that I had to be honest with these guys about. And but I think they just appreciated me being honest and just a good guy about it. I was never trying to I was never trying to be something I wasn't. I remember talking to Paul Homer before. I'm like, do I have to like fake snap? Because I'm not really like, I don't really like snap. And he's like, no, man. He's like, just be you. Like, just go do you. And that's was the advice I got. And I was like, oh, thank you for that. That vote of confidence. I can just like be. I don't have to like try and be something that I'm not. And I think that was probably what kept me around for 7 years. But there was part of coaching that I really liked. I think that's why I'm in the world of like psychotherapy now and personal development, is like that piece of the coaching, the hockey coaching I was doing more like psychotherapy than I was like a hockey coaching. Like I was showing them video and all that stuff, but like most of the time I was just talking about like, the psychology, preparation and mindset and letting things go and, all these like, little terms that we have in hockey and in life. But so I think that's why I'm still in the, say, if you want to call it like the coaching space, just in a different lane, was that I just like feel like I connect with people, and I'm a good listener. I think I am. I think I am. My wife may not say that, but I think I am. And and I really genuinely want the best for the person, whether it's for, in the hockey space or not. Like, if you don't make it in hockey, I don't give a shit. All I care about you is that you find like happiness in your life and you find fulfillment. You know what I mean? Because if you're doing all these things and you're spinning your tires and you never find happiness, well, what is the point? So I think I've just taken that out of the hockey and into the real world, where, I'm mixing that philosophy with, yoga and plant medicine and the whole bit. But yeah, no, there's something really sacred about connecting with people, even though it's under the umbrella of coaching hockey. But at the end of the day, you're coaching humans, and I've learned that guys' performance increases when their personal life improves. Like, like if you just like fix a few things and start thinking a little bit differently, everything kind of shifts, and a lot of guys get in ruts and they find themselves with roadblocks, but a lot of times they're their own worst enemy and they don't even realize it until you kind of bring some awareness around it. So, and that just like translates into in the real world, people don't want to just be, they don't want to be accountable. They want to be honest with themselves. They think that they're so good, they think that they're playing this good, but it's like, no, you're not. If I have to show you those 20 clips from last game, all right, we'll sit down and watch those 20 clips. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like, but that's what it takes, right? If you want to improve at anything, you have to be accountable. You have to be honest. And I think that's, what I learned the most about coaching hockey.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Riley, I know you have played with so many guys, dude, especially guys that have done like similar roles to what we have, where they get into a fight, not even necessarily a fight, man. It could be blocking a shot. It could be, taking a hit and not going into the boards properly. They break their hands. They break their wrist. Okay. They're in a cast, 4 to 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Doctor prescribes them some painkillers, right? So doctors prescribe me painkillers. I'm taking it for my injury. I'm going to take them, right? I'm going to take them. I like them. I like these. I like these. Hands better. Yep. I still like these.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
So maybe instead of the doctor, maybe I'm going to call my buddy and, it's cool. The doctor said I could take it. I'm going to keep taking it. Now my body is dependent on it. Now I'm switching. Now I'm getting something that's even cheaper, but it's really, really illegal, right? So we've seen this happen to our buddies, to our peers, to our teammates. Yep. You, my friend, have been, in my mind, I know we're the same age and everything, buddy, but I'm not even going to take the credit away because I still think it would have been, no matter how old I was, I still would have thought the same way. You, my friend, have been the biggest advocate for alternative medicine to addictive pharmaceutical drugs. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you make it well publicly known that you use cannabis as an alternative to addictive pharmaceutical drugs. I love that. I absolutely love it. I'm a big believer. Okay. I'm a big believer. Now, I know you've probably been asked like a million times, but what I want to know is, do you believe that there would have been so many avoided problems, bro, if this type of stuff was just approved more sooner, been more popular, been mainstream? Like, how many lives would have been saved, Riley? Like,
oh God, a ton. There's been so much darkness. So just through hockey, just through sport, but I think sports is just a microcosm of the macro, right? I mean, it's a societal problem, right? I mean, we have pill problem, specifically opioids, synthetic heroin, and alcohol. And you look at the culture of hockey; it's entrenched in booze. And I was right in the mix of it all, like most guys were, right? I mean, you just think that that's the way you need to manage your stress and manage your anxieties, your performance anxieties, and sleep. And then when you get banged up, or if you want to lighten up a little bit more, then then the pill mill comes rolling through. And whether it's with or without an injury, the pills are around, right? I mean, I never been exposed to an opioid until I turned pro at 20. I'd always been a cannabis user. I grew up in Winnipeg. There's a big, cannabis culture in Canada. I had no idea that cannabis was medicine until I retired. The year I retired in 2010, I'd used it my whole life, pretty frequently, and I really didn't understand it the way I do now. But there was something, very spiritual going on where, where you call it a gut feeling or intuition, something's telling you that this is not that bad, and it's helping. I realized it helping me when I turned pro and started fighting with the performance anxiety and the sleep. So I was like, shit, I'm like, this stuff is really, this is really helping me get through the grind here. But that was also the year I was kind of begin to be exposed to these other drugs, and I'd never been exposed to an opioid or a Percocet or a muscle relaxer or this and that. And then you guys are exchanging these things on the bus. And this is the Central Hockey League. Not that it's, it doesn't really matter what league it was, because I saw this in the American Hockey League and I saw this in the NHL. So it didn't really matter. But the bottom line is that, I am grateful that I had a relationship with cannabis, because had I not, I think I would have been 100% consumed and swallowed up by the pills and the booze. And I trust me, I experimented with both very heavily at some points. But I think the relationship I had with cannabis at some point always kind of make me realize that I could get away with just using cannabis. In fact, my last two surgeries in the year, I had a finger surgery and a nose surgery. And to prove to myself, I had read a book called Hemp for Health, and I started to read about the science of these cannabinoids outside of THCs, anti-inflammatories, and the whole bit. And I read that book, and that gave me the confidence after these last two surgeries. I threw away the pills that I got post-surgery and just used cannabis for pain management and inflammation. And it was there I had this moment of like, aha, I get it. This whole time has it been medicine. This whole time has it been pain management and anxiety management and sleep management. I just had been misusing it this whole time. And so many other people, probably fall in that same category. But that was when I realized, holy shit. And that was like right in that moment of me retiring and making this connection, was that like, holy, this is part of my recovery. This needs to be part of my recovery, is mindful cannabis use. But back to your question about, could this have saved a ton of lives? 110,000%. Like, this is like, and this is not by accident, right? Cannabis prohibition didn't accidentally happen. Like, oh, this government that really cares about my health is banning this plant because it's bad for me. No, it's because it's protecting the pharmaceutical industries. The outlaw for nature, it threatens the pharmaceuticals, right? Mushrooms as well. I mean, any natural medicine for that matter, including food as medicine, interferes with the prescription drug model. So that being said, it's not by accident that like guys didn't know much about it. That was the design. It was introduced booze. Booze is like is the pain management tool, and if you're in pain, you're gonna be on a synthetic heroin pill. And that was the model. That's still technically the model. We're in the U.S. here. Cannabis is still a federally illegal substance. It's still a Schedule I drug in the U.S., meaning it has no medical value and it's highly addictive. And it's amazing, hypocrisy 101. So we still have a lot of work to do. I know in Canada it's a different animal, but there's still a lot of politics in cannabis legalization up there. But yeah, I mean, we still have so much work to do. Like, I would like to see it at a point where, you talk about sports medicine, sports recovery, sports regeneration, like there should be at least CBD or some of these minor cannabinoids in the locker rooms, whether tinctures, transdermal patches, they're getting massages. There's a lot of science coming out around the cannabinoids as neuroprotectants for guys getting their bell rung. They're saying there's studies coming out of Israel with the military that they've been using CBD for 25 years for traumatic brain injury and PTSD. So they're saying like getting the cannabinoids in the system on the front end. And I'm not saying like smoking herb before games, but like you can get cannabinoids in your system that have very, very low amounts of THC that are actually creating a neuroprotectant effect. The U.S. government holds a patent on cannabinoids as neuroprotectants and antioxidants since 2004. So like there's all this underlying hypocrisy happening, and no one's really talks about it. People want to argue that cannabis is this and that and all this stuff. I'm like, cannabis is medicine. And if people want to abuse it, they will. They will abuse anything. I think part of my job and an educator's job is to teach mindful cannabis use. But there's never been a manual around cannabis use ever, right? I mean, cannabis is the number one ingredient in the U.S. pharmacopoeia for over 100 years before prohibition. But since then, it's been suppressed and it's been dusted under the rug as just like some sort of devil's lettuce, like that has no value at all. So now here we are, you got universities, you got researchers, you got scientists trying to bring forth legitimate science to how to properly use cannabis, dosing, delivery systems, and the whole bit. You know what I mean? And it's not complex in theory. It's just complex to realize how out of touch we are with Mother Nature and its healing abilities. So we just have to be simplify our thinking and be like, whoa. That makes sense. Cannabis, is outside of medicine, it's an amazing industrial resource. You talk about fiber, food, fuel, building materials, you know what I mean? And so this is a political maneuver to outlaw cannabis. It wasn't because it was bad for you. It interferes with the big business boys, It's like
Big
that's
pharma.
it. Pharma and oil and
oil.
and synthetic fibers like nylon. Because the hemp is a natural bast fiber. It was the oldest, form of clothing and parachutes and all the wars and all the suits and uniforms are all hemp, right? That's the reality. But we're in a chemical world, and pharmaceuticals are chemically made, patented, isolated drugs. And Mother Nature, you can't patent it, So that's the world we're living in. It's always about money. It's not about public health. Never been about public health. Just for the record. So if people are looking around right now thinking that your government actually gives a shit about your health, they don't. So you're on your own. Figure it out. And I'm just trying to be honest with this and speak the truth, because we need more truth speakers, because we're finding ourselves in a really bad spot. Look at what COVID's done to, just the human spirit, if you will. Yeah. Understanding public health and understanding natural immunity and all this stuff, where it's like, whew, we're running a slippery slope right now with some of these policies that we're mandating. So we got to be careful with how much power do we give pharmaceutical companies, because it's very dangerous, So here we are.
Well, dude, I try to pride myself that this show's about awareness, and I'm so happy that you just said so many of the things that you just said. Because no, you have no idea, man. It's so awesome, man. So just okay. I'm loving this right now, Riley. Now, the research guy in me is researching. After retiring, obviously you co-founded the Athletes for Care, right? So the technical part of it is this is a group that advocates for athletes on issues of health and safety, including the use of cannabis. So, man, that's really cool. Are you still involved with Athletes for Care?
I am, yeah. So I'm one of the co-founders. Early on, when I retired, I went on the speaking circuit, around cannabis, around pain management, concussion protocols, sleep management. Ran into several, all kinds of different athletes, different sports, that had similar stories, how cannabis saved their life, or how it improved their life, or help transition them out of playing from an addiction or wherever it lands up being. So there landed up being a few other football players, as well as actually the daughter of Ed Snyder, who owned and founded the Flyers, landed up coming together and founding Athletes for Care. And it really landed up being around cannabis at the start, as cannabis is an alternative to opioid-based drugs and alcohol, and really an exit drug versus as a gateway drug. And but as we've learned and we've understood that cannabis is just one tool in the toolbox. I'm not going to sit here and tell people that cannabis is going to cure everything, and you start using cannabis and your whole life is going to be like magical, right? It's just it's an amazing tool, but it has to be used properly, and that's what we're really advocating for, is responsible cannabis use, because like you said earlier, you can abuse anything. And if we're trying to get well, which if that's the goal, which it should be, right, is to use the medicine the right way, and eventually maybe weaning off or using less. The idea is not to use more. Keep using more and more and more, right? So that's a big one, but it's one tool in the toolbox that is in the toolbox of wellness, right? And it's been super beneficial. Darren McCarty, I'm not sure if you had him on your show. You
yes,
gotta get him on
I did.
Show. Have you? Yeah. So you talk about a guy like that, and everyone has their version of their story. But he'll tell you cannabis saved his life twice. You know what I mean? And and he's very, very sincere and genuine about it. But that story is actually becoming very, very, very congruent as time passes, that like people are finding cannabis as an exit drug. They're getting off these pharmaceutical drugs, and Athletes for Care was really just designed to be like bring some awareness around the conversation and help with drug policies around sports and start having a voice within these sports organizations and the players associations and the alumni associations that just, gosh, there's a better way. Like I go to the Flyers alumni events and stuff like that. I see a lot of guys that can hardly move. I can see a lot of guys that hip replacements and whatever else replacements and are dealing with, I know they're dealing with substance abuse of some sorts, whether it was already ingrained in them before the surgery. And I always go back to alcohol because I know like half the Flyers organization is gone through substance abuse programs, specifically AA. You know what I mean? So had there been an alternative that they could wrap their head around and then maybe not throw it under the umbrella of substance, you know what I mean? Because you have to be a Buddhist monk to go through some of these traditional substance abuse programs where you're abstinent from everything, right? I mean, it's like people have pain, people have issues that they need to deal with, and if you can't take anything, like you're gonna suffer. So part of what we're trying to do is just like, listen, like there's this amazing plant that can be used several different ways, several different delivery systems, and several different doses and combinations of cannabinoids. It's like finding what works best for you and trying to use this as legitimate medicine. And I think that's what we try to do. And it's evolved. We started this like 6 or 7 years ago. And the conversations evolved so much now that, like, you know, we have state legislations in different states have passed since then. Canada's gone full legalization since then. In fact, I'm such a proponent of cannabis. I'd rather see this stuff recreational. I mean, it's not even talking about medicinal use. Yeah. I'd rather see a population of society using cannabis as a recreational tool than booze. We talk about how its impact on society and violence and relationships and consciousness and, you know, all these things, right? It's like, what are we doing? If the powers that be really gave a shit about our health and society's health, well, why is alcohol sold everywhere? Cigarettes, and, you know, you go down the list of like stuff that's extremely destructive. But again, they don't give two rats asses about our health, you know, and until we prove them otherwise, you know what I mean? I think people need to take their power back with this stuff. Like, there's power in the plant, not just in the medicine itself, but there's some sort of sovereignty there, right? And they say the same thing about mushrooms. Like, take the power back, like tap back into Mother Nature and give our power away to all these other corporations. But that's just a philosophy of thinking too. Like, there has to be some sort of trust in something, and most people aren't educated enough to take that leap. So we have organizations like us, like that, we're just trying to educate, get the good word out there, and bring some awareness around it. But it takes time, right? I mean, you talk about 90 plus years of prohibition, of brainwashing and propaganda. It's not that easy to be like, hey, you know, snap out of it. Cannabis is medicine. You know, it's like people are so trusting and they put all their stock into, you know, the pharmaceutical industry, and unfortunately, our pharmaceutical industries let people down more often than not, you know, in one way, shape, or form, including extreme amounts of death when you talk about opioids. But sleeping pills don't help with sleep. You know, it's like, you know, like, in fact, it'll cause several other, you know, mental health issues if you keep going on that rabbit hole. But, you know, last time I checked, cannabis is an amazing tool for sleep. You know, even like getting to like the NyQuil stuff and all that over-the-counter crap, it's like, it's garbage, you know what I mean? But sleep, if you talk about like basic regeneration and recovery, sleep is the spine of it all. If you don't sleep properly, you're never going to feel refreshed and energized the next morning. You're always going to chase the dragon with stimulants and food and whatever else you're trying to get the energy from. As soon as you can reel in the sleep, you know, starting with that, like, your life and everything gets better. But cannabis is notoriously help with calming the nervous system, stress management, and sleep management. You know, and pain management. So it's like banging the drum. It's like, I wish more people would listen, you know, but it takes time, right? It takes time when you've been, say, you know, we're living in a cultural hypnosis in a sense, right? We've been brainwashed for so long about certain things, cannabis prohibition being one of them, but there's several other things that we've been just conditioned to think that are okay. And, you know, we just got to change our thinking. I think now's the time. I think people are becoming a little bit more awake to what's going on, and the amount of death and unneeded suffering that's going on around them in the community at large, or within their family, you know, with addiction and substance abuse.
Yes, brother. And perfect time to bring up what you are a co-founder of as well, the Bodychek Wellness, brother.
Yeah. So Bodychek Wellness is a hemp-derived CBD and functional mushroom company. So here in the U.S., we have different laws that allow us to sell cannabinoid-based products outside of the dispensary model. So in Canada, you have to go to the dispensary even if you're buying just CBD. These are all grown under 0.3% THC, so they're technically in the category of hemp. So we call them hemp-derived CBD. Still a cannabis plant, but it's grown below 0.3% THC. So again, high in CBD and some other minor cannabinoids, CBG and CBN, that are really good. Again, good for pain, inflammation, and the brain. And then the functional mushrooms, like the whole movement of mushrooms, and most people hear mushrooms, they're think of portobellas or magic mushrooms, and I am in the psilocybin mushroom space, but these ones we're talking about are lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, chaga, agarikon, turkey tail, stuff like that. That's all about immune system boosting, focus, clarity, just overall optimal brain health. And the cannabinoids can fall into that category. I honestly think that again, the neuroprotectant properties of the CBD, the neurogenesis properties of the CBD, combined with mushrooms, like just there's a way of calming the nervous system and optimizing brain health. Because the brain, from what I've learned, the main brain is in our gut, right? It's our GI. It's like the whole food and mood connection. So if you're taking care of the gut and calming that down with maybe a cannabinoid CBD. And then you're adding a mushroom and an adaptogen like a lion's mane, which is really good for the brain, or a reishi, which is good for brain and mood stabilization. The mushrooms almost work better. They're adaptogens. They work with stress responses. So again, it's all about the dose. Again, the THC level is so low that there's no chance of getting high from these products. Which, again, there's a huge market of people that don't want to get high. That's the beautiful thing about cannabis is like when people think of cannabis, they think of like Cheech and Chong, a 3 ounce J sitting on the couch, where it's like, yeah. Okay, well, I'm not exactly opposed to that, but I mean, we're trying to accomplish something greater than that, right? With this plan. So it's like, here we are. There's all these different delivery systems and different combinations of cannabinoids as well as adaptogens. So that's really what it is. It's pain management, it's brain optimization, it's focus, it's clarity, it's sleep optimization. So the mushrooms and the cannabinoids work well together. And then building off the mushroom, I'm also an advisor and investor in a psilocybin mushroom company. It's based in it's based in Toronto, but it operates in Jamaica since psilocybin mushrooms are legal and unregulated there. So they're doing some pretty amazing stuff around the brain. In fact, doing a story at the end of January in Jamaica with ESPN around psilocybin and brain regeneration and mental health. So, wow, we're probably 10, 15 years ahead. We're almost behind where we were with cannabis. Like, cannabis is now 15 years ahead of, where we are with mushrooms. I think this is moving a little bit faster. Just the age of information, and the amount of media outlets that are behind this right now. And the amount of movement, because the FDA's fast-tracked synthesized psilocybin, and MDMA, and ketamine. Those are synthesized drugs, but with magic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms are extremely, extremely intelligent and extremely well known for, again, immune system boosting, but brain regeneration. So, and then there's a spiritual element to those as well, like above and beyond the absolute medical and the biological things that are happening in the brain, where there's brain regeneration and neural connectivity, all that stuff. There's something spiritual happening. So with the mushrooms, it's like what I look at when I see the mental health crisis and everyone's putting it in different medical buckets, depression, anxiety, bipolar, all these different things. To me, like what I've learned, because I've been in the space for some time, is that these are all spiritual issues. The spiritual meaning that there's lack of connection, not just like connection to your phone, but connection to sources of intelligence higher than yourself. Mother Nature, starting there, starting with your diet, starting with the medicine you're using, going back to cannabis and mushrooms. Like, what are you putting in your body? And the psilocybin mushrooms have a really powerful, profound way of delivering insights in your own personal life of what you need to improve on. You know what I mean? There's self-exploration, there's the personal development, the personal and spiritual growth component. So you come out of this, it's helping regenerate the brain, but more importantly, it's helping you. It's like injecting some spirit into you, where you come out of these immersions with like an awareness of like this oneness and this energy that's way more powerful than you ever believed. So yeah, I mean it's amazing to think that like these drugs that we grew up thinking were so bad, and all the reckless, and all the outlaw bikers and gangs and everything, like hustling this stuff, and for good reason. There's obviously money to make on the black market, but this is stuff was like legitimate spiritual medicine. And we're at a point in our lives right now where mankind needs an injection of spirit. We're tired of the bullshit. We're tired of the suppression and the lies, and the mismanagement of medicine and people. And I think this stuff gives people the power back if it's used right and respected and tapped into the right way. So
100%. And Riley, it's so cool that you're talking about like this aspect right now, because I'm seeing it more and more. I'll give you a little example. I talk about my family a lot, but one of my brothers, man, he's in with the Weekend. He's an XO guy, right? Belly, the artist Belly. Okay, I was watching an interview from Belly, and Belly was talking about these types of mushrooms that you're talking about now. Now he was saying that he's been taking mushrooms for a long time, since he was a kid, since in high school. He would take them and whatever, but it was with no intention. Right. Now that he knows about dosage, now that he knows about, and he's talking about the tea, right? Now that he knows what he's doing and why he's doing it, it's limitless possibilities. This man writes the songs for the Weekend, doing this.
Yeah,
bro, they're number one in the world. So trust me, he's on the right path with this.
Yep, 100%. You said it. It's all about intention, right?
Yes.
You go into anything with the right intention versus no intention or the wrong intention. It's a completely different outcome. The same exact mushroom with a different intention, you can have a completely different outcome and experience. And that's everything. It's like the same thing when you practice yoga or even cannabis. Like, what is the intention? What are you trying to accomplish here? Back in the day, probably to your buddy's, or to his point there, and I was the same way. You eat mushrooms and you go to Kings of Leon concert, or you go to a party or festival. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but a completely different experience, right? There's the distractions, there's lights, and there's no turning inwards and listening, and downloading the information from the mushroom. But as soon as you take that same mushroom and you go into essentially a myco meditation, mushroom-induced meditation, well, now you're stilling the mind. You're finding absolute stillness and quietness, that you're able to listen. And you're listening to the universe speak to you. And I know it sounds very granola and out there from people that don't understand this and never had this experience, but that's what it is. When you quiet the mind, it's like without the mushroom, that's what a meditation is, right? That's why meditation is like the oldest form of mastering your mind. But then you add the power intelligence of the mushroom, where it's like the downloads are so deep and ancient. You're talking about like universal truths forever that are coming through. But the only reason you're getting them is because you've quieted the mind, and you're finding stillness, and you're not, there's no distractions. There's no buddies coming knocking down the door. All this other stuff. It's like you went into this with the intention of healing or finding yourself, whatever that lands up being. But intention is everything. That's just like the law, one of the laws of nature, right? Is like, if your intention is good and something negative happens, well, there's no bad karma because the intention was right. If the intention was wrong, then and something good, or maybe there's some weird karma that's manifested out of it. It's always the intention. You try and help somebody and it doesn't work out, and you maybe hurt them. Well, I'm a firm believer that karma maybe just disappears or whatever because the intention was right. That's everything. You know what I mean? And but yeah, it's amazing when you start looking at these medicines the right way, with respect and a connection to them, how it completely changes your life. And you talk about him writing all these songs, like the element of creativity. We're creative beings. I think when you talked earlier about expressing yourself, if we're not expressing, we're going to express one way or another. Whether you're consciously expressing, eventually your body, the vehicle of the body has to express somewhere. And it's going to be through anger. It's going to be through violence. It's going to be through sex, whatever it lands up being. But we're creative beings. And if we're not creating something, even if it's just like simple little creations around the house that mean nothing. Just like your mind you're expressing through, this lens of creativity. The mushrooms and even cannabis. I mean, you look at some of the arguably the best artists on the planet have used whether cannabis or mushrooms or LSD
Yeah.
or something like that,
Well,
to expand their consciousness and awareness and creativity.
with Belly, it's all of the above. He's very
Yeah.
proud of it. And man,
Yeah.
does he ever know what he's doing with
Yeah.
the intention, with the dosage. It's incredible, man. And this guy just does such incredible creative stuff. That's number one. And there's a reason for it because it's good, right?
Yeah, it's good, man. It's
Yeah,
coming from it's coming from sourced energy too, right? So it's got to be good when you're coming from the place of divine energy, right? I mean, that's just like that's where it is, and it's coming from a place of love. Really, it's coming from the heart, and there's a huge movement. You talk about intention, like the psilocybin mushrooms aren't just about going like deep within all the time. There's a huge movement around them, and I'm sure he practices this a little bit. Is microdosing mushrooms, like a sub psychedelic dose where you're not feeling the psychedelic effects, but you find that flow state, you find that groove, you're a little more present, you're a little more aware.
Wow.
And when you're a little more present, a little more aware, you're a little more creative, right?
Yeah.
It's when you're all tensed up and anxious is when you can't create. You're blocked. So like the small amounts of microdosing psilocybin helps, just helps you be more present. Like every spiritual teaching on the planet tells you and talks about the present moment, right? The past is the past, the future is the future. There is only the present moment. But most people can't live in the present moment because they're so stressed, they're so anxious or depressed. So I think these tools again help you bring it back in. And when you're in the present moment, you're in flow. I mean, you hear a flow state all the time, but that's the only time you can be in flow is if you're in the present moment and living in it. And whether you're a hockey player in flow, you can be more creative, or you're an artist in flow, or it's all the same at the end of the day. But you're able to create at a higher level because you're able to just pull everything into the present moment. So I know it's getting a little deep with it all, but it's very real.
Great though.
And you look at like if you study like Steve Jobs and some of these really intelligent tech guys, like they all have a relationship with psychedelics.
I know.
And I openly talk about it because even like Joe Rogan and Elon Musk and you talk about some of these ideas, and they talk about going to a space of DMT and pulling out ideas out of the ether and bring them back into the physical world and manifesting them. Like if you look around us, like everything around us was an idea. It's like that most people don't think of the stuff like that. It's like, oh, just stuff that just like people just make stuff. Well, it all starts with an idea, and then you it's like a seed, and then that seed you water it, you nurture it, and then you grow these ideas. But very creative people and people that have done huge things, they all have a relationship with psychedelics in some way, shape, or form. You just gotta read about it. You gotta learn about it, right? Because most people are so like living in this box, and but it's pretty magical. And you learn about this stuff. It's like it's empowering, right? Because there's so much more to this world than what we've been told. And Mother Nature is like we feel like so separate from it. But we are it. You know what I mean? The sooner we understand that and go back to it, it's got all the stuff we need. Like look at like the basic fundamental of food is medicine and medicine is food. Like Hippocrates said this like 3,000 years ago. It's not a new concept. Like the nutrients in the food are to help us like sustain life. And what have we done? We've denatured food. We've taken nutrients out of food and made it processed, and what I mean, where it's like it's hurtful and harmful and it makes us sick. Or it's like if we just like understand that, we can just like reorganize our diet and start getting energy and power from our diet. Some simple whole foods coming from nature, not from some sort of factory that's like plopping in sugar sugar molecules after sugar molecules. So these philosophies aren't new. I mean, meditation, yoga, breathing, diet, cannabis, mushrooms, like this is ancient stuff. This is way back thousands and thousands of years, and we're just kind of now in the 21st century are figuring out that that's where we need to go back to, because we've just become so disconnected from everything, except for our phones. There's no connection to nothing, including our relationships with people. We're just none anymore. With the age of information, with the age of technology, of just like severed any connection that we've still had. So I know it's getting a little bit off, but it's just like
No, not at all, buddy.
stuff is just so ancient and powerful that that's why there's such a huge movement right now. You know, it took this long because there was no way of getting the message out. You know, there was only 2 newspapers back in the day. It was all propaganda, right? And there was like maybe 2 TV stations, and it was all it was all owned by the system itself, and the media is still controlled by the system. But there's all this other alternative information available now with podcasting and all this alternative, TV and the Vices and whatever. There's a million of them. Netflix.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of documentaries. So now people can understand and digest some of this stuff and take those leaps of faith. And there's really high-end people putting these messages out there where people can be like, "Holy geez, like this must be real if that guy's talking about it, or if that guy's talking about." I mean, Will Smith just recently came out and talked about psychedelic, his psychedelic experience. Like Mark Messier, read in his book, he talks about having a profound experience at 20. Yeah. You never think about mess. You know what I mean? It's like, this is like crazy shit like that. Like, man, it's like, it's almost like something that like you almost want to tell the younger generation to at least explore, because it could put you light years ahead of where you need to be. Maybe you can avoid some of the darkness by just being a little more aware. And I think that, whether you're talking about cannabis, but specifically psychedelics, there's a level of awareness with them that it's just like optimal, that, you can just kind of see it for what it is and avoid a lot of the fluff. So.
Wow, buddy, I'm so grateful for this content. Like I'm so grateful, man, that we have a platform to talk about stuff like this. It's great. I got 3 things for you, Riley, right now. I got 3 things for you. The first one is, I got to put you on the hot seat, buddy. The first one is, would Riley Cote come back for a part 2 on the Sheriff podcast? On the hot seat.
Absolutely. I love that shit. Yeah, 100%.
That was quick.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Okay, so second one is, this is so valuable, Riley, that like, it's valuable for me, and I want every single listener to know how to find out more about this. So first off, I want you to mention how we, okay, so the Bodychek Wellness website, link, whatever, that first, and then anything that can support informative for the listeners.
Yeah, so Bodychek Wellness, and check is CHEK, so bodychekwellness.com, and that's for the hemp-derived CBD and functional mushrooms. And then I would send them to wake.net for the psilocybin mushroom information, clinical immersions, and some of the stuff we're doing around the brain regeneration. They have a partnership with the Lieber Institute that has the largest database of genetically profiled brains that they're working with. So some really interesting cutting edge stuff with like the world of mushrooms and technology. So really capturing brain waves and essentially showing the world your brain before psilocybin, during, and post, and showing the actual connected neurons, regeneration, the whole bit. So wake.net has some pretty interesting stuff. They've also have a microdose drug that is registered through the government of Jamaica and is in phase 2 clinical trials in Jamaica right now. So we're just trying to do what we can in different legal markets. So when things open up here, that we kind of just turnkey. They've also imported their own psilocybin mushrooms into the U.S. 3 separate times through the DEA. So this is legit. Like, this is like real stuff that's happening. I know we're still in the early phases of this evolving, but I think the sooner people can wrap their head around this, the sooner they can kind of explore it, learn about it, and when the time comes, maybe there's an opportunity to travel. And there's a lot of ayahuasca retreats going on in Costa Rica and Peru, and that's a whole other dimension of a psychedelic. And then the same thing's going on in Jamaica with the psilocybin. So wake.net, pretty powerful. And then again, we're doing a story with the ESPN, and then in January should be releasing, I think, in like April or May. But I think that would be an amazing piece, to show, show this through the lens of sports, and how there's the brain component, there's the PTSD component, and then we didn't really talk about this, but this identity crisis that happens to military veterans when they come back from war. There's identity crisis of who they are. But I think this happens in sports a lot, where guys retire and they put their whole ego, their whole stock, their whole being into the hockey player or the enforcer or whatever. So there's this identity crisis, and I think that psilocybin mushrooms are very spiritual in the sense of helping you learn who you are outside of the job that you've done or you do. So there's like this element of like, oh shit, like you got the retired hockey player, retired football player that has found himself after the game, and it's and using psychedelics to kind of propel that or get them insight. So there's the brain, like actual brain. There's the mental health, and then there's like the spirit. Again, I think the identity crisis falls absolutely in the spiritual bucket of like, well, who am I? What's my purpose? Because my purpose wasn't to get punched in the face forever. It's like you could do that for some time and it served its purpose, but that wasn't my purpose. So my purpose, the purpose is always way bigger than yourself, and you just got to figure that out and use the platform that you've created to be able to propel that and elevate that and find that. But certainly it will be an interesting piece, and I'm excited to be a part of it because I don't know, it's just so necessary. I think it was necessary before COVID, but COVID's exacerbated the mental health issue. Like we're more confused and in fear and mentally distraught now than we've ever been on this planet.
Yeah.
So learning about yourself, at the end of the day, we're not going to change these policies overnight, and we're not going to be able to battle this tyranny overnight. But what you can do is find inner peace, right? And take care of yourself and find, peace and love within, and just try and do the best within yourself and in your surrounding areas, and just kind of like build out that ripple effect around you and your community. That's what you can do. You know what I mean? There's only so much you can do in this planet, and it's controlling your thoughts, and it's doing the inner work that you can control, and then everything else will kind of will follow, because that becomes your reality, right? But if you're in a funk and you're confused and you're not sure who you are, it's hard to thrive. You're in survival mode, right? You're in survival mode, and we want to get out of survival mode, and we want to get into we want to thrive. Like we want to create, we want to build,
enjoy life,
and help, right? Enjoy life, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. Things have changed a lot in the last 2 years, but there's the good news is there's a ton of hope. There's a ton of hope for everybody, and there's a ton of amazing resources out there and tools out there to help, optimize the mind and spirit. And but at the end of the day, we have to do the work. That's the one thing I want to make sure I'm clear on, is that these things will never do the work for you. They'll show you some insights and some amazing downloads, but at the end of the day, we have to do the work. Like we have to change our diet. We have to change our thinking. We might have to trim some fat of some of the people that we're hanging around with. Maybe we got to say no now and then. Maybe we got to stop going here or there. And, like those are the things that we have to figure out ourselves. But that's the work. That's the discipline that these tools kind of help us realize. And once you start feeling better and your mind starts feeling better and you're feeling more powerful and empowered, like, you don't really want to go back to those deep dark corners that you were maybe frequenting back in the day and stuff like that. So that's the work, right? And that's on us to engage in it, but it requires an awareness around the things that we need to change.
Wow, dude, that is, man, I can't even tell you how amazing that is, man. It's so amazing everything you just said. I'm so thankful that it's being said on this platform, man. You have no idea. So, okay, dude, here's the third one, man. I wasn't even there was no chance I was interrupting you while you were giving that kind of info.
It was long-winded.
No, bro, that was amazing. Have you been skating, Mr. Riley Cote?
I have been, yeah.
You have been?
I have been, yeah. I play about once a week, just making pickup. And funny story, actually, I played a Flyers alumni game a couple weeks ago. I feel better now than I ever felt in my life. It's funny, I'm like 30 pounds lighter, way better shape, just different type of strength, the yoga strength and the breathing and be more efficient. It's just like, I'm like, God, I wish I could go back in time and at least try this thing out like the way I'm wired now. But 2 weeks ago, I'm buddies with a guy named Dave McIsaac. I don't remember that name.
Yeah, he was my guest 2 shows ago. That's the reason why I'm bringing this up, buddy. I'm a big Riley Cote fan. And I heard there's a chance that we might see Riley Cote in a Danbury Hat-Tricks uniform. And man, did that ever get me excited, brother.
Yeah, it almost happened 2 weeks ago. I signed the contract and everything. It was 2 Sundays ago. and I was getting ready to rock. It was an afternoon game in Delaware. That was the reason why I agreed to play. It was like 45 minutes from where I'm living here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I know Mac from the Phantoms days and everything like that. And we have a
great
good
guy,
relationship. Yeah. And so I agreed to it. They signed the contract, and then my youngest daughter landed up getting a kidney infection, and my wife's like, "Oh man, I think I gotta take her into the hospital." I'm like, "Geez, am I getting serious?" I'm like, "Mac promised me some power play time." So I had to make
of course,
the responsible decision, and I just call it Mac. I was like, "Listen," I'm like, the unfortunate timing. I can't believe this is actually happening because I've never actually had to take either of my daughters to the hospital, but I have to take her to the hospital, so I can't play there. So that opportunity fell through the cracks, but yeah, he's hit me up since then a couple times. He's like, take a look at the calendar, see if you want to come down for a weekend. But I told him I wasn't interested in fighting, man. I was like, you know what, like
no, but just to see you on the ice, Riley, like you have to understand, man.
Like, yeah, for sure.
Man. I don't think anyone would fight you, buddy.
Yeah, no, and I would be honest too. I'd be like, listen, I'll smoke a peace pipe with you after. I just want to come here and have some fun and play hockey. You know what I mean? And just like play a pro game with with the way I feel now, with the mindset I have now, and have some fun with it. But yeah, that's what I told Mac. I was like, listen, I'm not interested in fighting. He's like, no, dude. He's like, we need some bodies for power play. I was like, power play? I was like, so who knows? I mean, by the end of the season, I'm sure I'll squeeze out a game. But like, the intention was never to play full time or anything like that, and like make a comeback. It was more to help him out and have a little fun along with it. But
yeah, dude.
Yeah, so I wouldn't even have thought about it had I not been, feeling good and mentally and physically and everything like that. But last thing I want to do too is get hurt. I feel I'm so like blessed with how I feel and how I've been able to change my body and really eliminate so much inflammation. I wake up in the morning feeling good. When you're back in the day you play, every day you wake up, your back is stiff, your groins are stiff, like something hurts, and like it took me a bunch of years to get to this point. So I like. Every time I play hockey, it leaves a stain on me. Even when I played the alumni game like 2 weeks ago, I was like, God damn, like my groin, my lower back. And I spent like 3 more days like rehabbing it, doing yoga and stuff, and just trying to get back to just feeling good. So it's just one of those love-hate relationships you have with a sport like hockey, especially when you're playing with like faster, stronger guys. You push yourself, and there shouldn't happen. Yeah, man. So we'll see how that goes down. But yeah.
Awesome, buddy. Well, I know there's a lot of Riley Cote fans out there because I'm one of them. So when I heard there was a chance of you putting on that uniform, man, it got my juices flowing, buddy. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that'll be interesting to see. Like if it works out, it works out. But I'll be so happy if you do get the chance to play. If the scheduling works out and stuff, that would be a pretty cool thing to see, dude.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I'm sure it will. Yeah, when the time is right, it'll manifest itself. Yeah.
Riley, man, I must say, buddy, I don't even think I could have guessed how informative, entertaining, and how much fun I had in this episode, bro. So, like, honestly, buddy, I know I kept you for a very long time, and I apologize, but the content, bro, it's priceless. It means so much to me, and like I know it means a lot to the listeners too, buddy. So I really appreciate it, man. But this is like, bro, this is absolutely perfect. So I'm gonna cut it here. I'm gonna thank the listeners for tuning in to another episode of The Sheriff featuring special guest Mr. Riley Cote, Mr. Philadelphia Flyer tough guy. It's the only person I think of when I think of a Flyers tough guy is Mr. Riley Cote, and I'm a big fan, bro, and I appreciate you coming on, man.
No, thank you, man. And likewise, I respect you and what you're doing, using your platform for good. And yeah, man, I've been following you and good shit. So thanks for having me. This means a lot, and definitely would do it again whenever.
Awesome, bro. Those are the words I wanted to hear. So we'll see you next time, guys. Woo!